Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Its title is, How Can Education Support a Sustainable and Healthy Food System? So if you're particularly interested in food system education, perhaps you're a professor, or a student, or a university administrator, or an industry looking for new talent, then this webinar is just right for you. If you're interested in shaping future food systems, perhaps as a policymaker, or a food researcher, or a food entrepreneur, then this webinar is also for you. Today, we will explore the good practices in progress and the changes that might be needed in higher education systems to support the transition towards a healthy and sustainable food system. One of the outcomes of this webinar will be to provide insights for the Future Foods Partnership by focusing on how innovation in education should be approached from both a policy and an industry perspective. A report from this webinar will serve as a resource, both for Future Foods Partnership and for other initiatives that are committed to innovating our education systems to support the transition towards sustainable food systems. Today's webinar is organized by the Food Paths Project, as you see behind me, and this is also in collaboration with the Healthy Diet, Healthy Life European Initiative. Food Paths is a Horizon Europe coordinated support action. It began in June 2022, and it runs until November 2025. Vrije in France is the project coordinator. Colleagues and project partners at Zon MW in the Netherlands, the coordinators of the Healthy Diet, Healthy Life EU initiative, were instrumental in organizing this webinar. And they're doing behind-the-scenes work right now to ensure that everything runs smoothly. Colleagues from EFFoST are also co-organizers. And I'm Katherine Flynn of ISEKI Food Association, also a partner in Food Paths, and I'll be moderating this 1 hour and 15-minute webinar. So right now, you should turn off your phone and close your email because you really want to pay attention to the program that we have lined up for you this afternoon. We'll start with 2 expert speakers with very different backgrounds and partnerships for food system education, who will each take a brief 10 minutes to tell you the high points of their experience. Instead of opening the floor to questions after these presentations, we invite you, the audience, to put your questions or your comments in the Q&A section, which you see on the bottom right of your Zoom screen. If there's time, we'll ask the speakers right then your questions, or the speakers will answer you after the webinar. We'll follow these 2 speakers with a panel discussion, with the 2 speakers being joined by 5 experts with diverse lenses on food system education: a professor, an education director, presidents of a student network, and an anthropologist. And this panel discussion is also open to you, the audience, both to ask questions to the panel and to contribute with your expertise. Then we close today's webinar with a short wrap-up and with some information about future Food Paths events. Before introducing the speakers, I'll tell you very briefly about the Food Paths Project. The project aim is to provide a pathway and the tools for an optimal operating environment for a European partnership on sustainable food systems for people, planet, and climate. This partnership, Future Foods, started in 2024 and is using the information provided by Food Paths initiatives such as this very webinar, to define its way of working. Included are such things as co-creation approaches, co-funding networks, alignment of research and innovation agendas, and establishing a network of universities. With the understanding that our conversation here is contributing to these short and long-term goals of accelerating the transition to sustainable food systems in Europe, we invite all participants to be fully engaged. And now I'll introduce our speakers. First is Gabriéla Versteeg. Gabriéla is the Managing Director of the European Federation of Food Science and Technology, known as EFFoST, and leading efforts to promote collaboration and innovation in food science and technology. She has experience working for the Dutch government in China, as well as experience in Asia and Africa, and she focuses on partnerships and knowledge exchange to advance sustainable food systems. And now, I give you Gabriéla Versteeg.
Thank you for the introduction. So I prepared a presentation and I will share my screen with you. Can you see it?
No, not yet, Gabriéla. Otherwise, if it's not working, Larissa can share the... Now it's working.
Okay, you see the full screen presentation?
Yes.
Okay. So as already introduced by Katherine, I will give a presentation on this webinar, How Can Education Support a Sustainable and Healthy Food System? And EFFoST is the work package leader for work package 5. And the main output of work package 5 is establish a branded network of university-driven local food ecosystems. So research and innovation is a critical resource for the EU in the transformation towards sustainable food systems for people, planet, and climate. And the prime condition for success is that a wide diversity of actors join forces in the EU partnership with a mission for change. In order to achieve this, it is important to link the international networks of institutions of higher education and research, working on food systems, transition to the other stakeholders involved, and invest in several types of knowledge exchange and training, knowledge transfer on training and food systems awareness. So in work package 5 of the Foodpath project, our aim is to develop a sample charter for institutions of higher education and research that exemplify the role such organizations can play in catalyzing sustainability in food systems. Therefore, we investigate and learn from existing study programs, accreditation systems, and the organization of the higher education and research institutes' local ecosystems. This, in the end, will conceptualize a branded network of EU higher education and research institute-driven local ecosystems that can foster improved food sustainable education and training programs, as well as public procurement and city engagement across member states. First, I would like to take you through the slide for understanding stakeholder needs. You see here the higher education and research institutes in the center, with 6 stakeholders identified around it. Primary, secondary school, where the need is mainly to create awareness. Students and young researchers, they have pathways to careers, ambitions, and personal values. So how does higher education, how does that match their ambitions? Living labs, startups, parks, cities, important for the transfer of innovation and technology and exportation. Policymakers, strategic research and innovation agenda, and the research innovation policy advice and education program. How does higher education link to that stakeholder? I will touch upon that later. Another one is nutritionists and society. Fortunately, we have 2 experts on that topic, so they can tell a little bit more about that. And of course, industry, because industry is needed for the implementation of the innovations, and also they have a need for specifically educated professionals. So we started with 3 steps to map the education and the programs that are currently available in the EU. And we found that there are a total of 74 programs in 23 countries at university level, and 15 programs based in 7 countries at postgraduate level. So this suggests that most education about sustainable food system is taking place at the university level in Europe. And there may, however, be a lack of specialization possibilities, as there are few postgrad programs that exist. We did this study through in 3 steps: desk study, a series of workshops, and an analyzing of independent rankings of university programs and practices. So the identification of the specific universities, and specifically any that are noted in all categories, together with the incorporation of the best practices identified by top ranked universities, will allow the next step of proposing a model for exemplary sustainable food education. What this map shows is that most of the universities and the current sustainable food system programs are mainly located in 3 countries: Spain, Italy, and the UK. Another outcome of the desk research, but mainly the workshops, is based on an earlier study that was done by the project Next Foods, which identified 6 drivers that were important for the quality in educational programs for sustainable food systems. In these workshops, participants were asked to identify which they regarded the most important driver for quality education. And there were 2 outstanding outcomes. One is that you see that teacher skills and capacity is one of the seen as the most important driver by the participants, and the participants were educators in the sustainable food system. And another important outcome is that you can see that all the answers or all the drivers are indeed located in the 6 categories, and none are identified in the category other. So that means that the earlier identified categories are indeed correct. So we took the first step in identifying where are the main sustainable food system programs in university level and postgraduate level located. And the second step is to compare universities and their curricula. So currently we're involved in the mapping via sustainability scores, surveys and interviews, comparing the curricula and the sustainability charts, interaction with and how they interact with the ecosystem. So we're receiving input from various organizations like ICA, EIT, Clever Food, FOSNet, to compare the curricula and to compare which of the universities take an important role in the ecosystem. This is still ongoing, but we already have some preliminary findings. So the findings are mainly on sustainable food systems. So we see that the approach sustainable food systems is present in bachelor and master studies, but less in lifelong learning programs. The definition is known, but is not always well placed in curricula. Food system approach, like for instance, food waste management system and sustainable food options, are available in campuses, but not widely spread. And we also see, for instance, that community gardens, demonstration sites, internship programs are an important part of teaching. And climate smart agriculture practices are already in teaching, but not aligned with wider sustainable food system approaches. And community gardens, oh, sorry, I already said it. Another thing that we can see is systemic approach. So this requires cooperation and continuous communication between the business on reporting on training and skills needs in the sustainable food system, indicating trends and public policy frameworks for the development of the sustainable food system to companies. We also identified for the sustainable corporate sustainable responsibility that not many universities have these kind of programs or follow a specific standard or label or have an action plan aiming at achieving the SDGs. So there is some common ground, but there's also quite a lot to develop. And the preliminary recommendations that we based on the findings is that principles, rules, and law to support internal organization and corporate practices are needed. Fostering cooperation on curricula and accreditation, and identification of needs from businesses and the proper understanding of the sustainable food system transformation. Most important is that universities can learn from each other, and networking and good practices on sustainable food system education in practice. This was my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gabriéla. It was very interesting. I've worked on some of that, and it was really nice to see it put together by you so nicely, and also respecting our time. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
And we're not going to take questions, although I think there are some in the question and answer tab. And I remind the audience, please, if you have any questions or comments for the speakers, you have a Q&A tab on the bottom right of your screen. And you can put your questions or comments there. And if we have some time, we'll pose them or we'll ask the speakers to respond to you. Right now, I'd like to introduce our second speaker, and this is Professor Eduardo Urias. Eduardo is an assistant professor in innovation and participation in sustainability transition at the Athens Institute and VU Amsterdam. His research focuses on inter- and transdisciplinary collaboration and knowledge integration, and on how these processes can enable more inclusive, just, and equitable sustainability transitions. And now I'll give the floor to Eduardo for a 10-minute, please, summary of your experiences here. Thanks, Eduardo.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Gabriéla, for the first presentation. Yeah, I'm here also representing Cleverfood, another cooperation supporting action funded by the European Commission. And it is to talk a little bit about our work in Cleverfood in terms of supporting higher education in and for food system transformation. Just quickly about Cleverfood, I think Cleverfood value proposition has to do with this need to integrate and coordinate projects that are funded by the European Commission. So there is a high degree of projectification of many challenges, and the same occurs in food system transformation. So how to have a platform to break those silos, how to connect initiatives that have similar overlapping goals, or to boost synergies across those projects. That's what Cleverfood wants to achieve by addressing these challenges. And part of Cleverfood is this Food 2030 network that is a network of projects. So more than 100 European projects were mapped, and 86 joined the network. And in the last Food 2030 conference in Brussels, more than 40 projects were represented. So also as an opportunity to share and exchange in person. How we organize this collaboration in Clever Food has to do with these vertical themes. So you can see in my screen those 6 themes. So from policy and governance, innovation, business development, education, citizen science, public engagement and empowerment, communication dissemination. And I will talk more about the education, citizen science theme that we open it up in different, let's say also sub-themes that are part of Clever Food and of this cross-project collaboration. And among those, my work focused basically on the last 2, that is establishing a network to collaborate on transforming higher education teaching for food system transformation, and also providing support for developing competencies and policies for food science education. And I'm happy that Gabriéla was the first, because then you can already see that between FoodPath and Clever Food, there are synergies to be explored. So also showing the need to have a platform like Clever Food to make this bridge between and across projects. So what I did in Clever Food was an analysis of existing curricula vis-a-vis existing competence frameworks for system transformation. So we identified 17 programs in higher education, 2 bachelor and 15 master level programs. And we complemented that with 11 modules. So these are summer schools, professional education courses, extracurricular activities and courses that are offered in higher education within the realm of food system transformation. And then we compiled all those learning objectives for those programs and modules and did a thematic analysis in terms of those learning goals relating to competence and competency frameworks for system transformation in general. And we gave more attention to this framework from Redmond and Vic because it's also is widely used and easier, less complex to actually make this comparison with learning objectives. So in this framework, they distinguish these core competences and complementary skills. So the core competences are system thinking, future thinking, value thinking, strategy thinking, interpersonal competence, implementation competence, integration competence, and this interpersonal competence. And the complementary skills are the disciplinary expertise, so which kind of disciplines, disciplinary knowledge are involved, but also other general and professional abilities. So basically then I did a thematic analysis of those 325 learning objectives according to those core competences and complementary skills. And the main findings in terms of core competences is that system thinking and strategy thinking are widely covered. So that was not a surprise. So those programs that focus on food system science, food system transformation, they have an explicit focus on system thinking and strategic thinking. But in terms of integration competences, so how to integrate knowledge from different disciplines, how to integrate knowledge from science and policy and societal stakeholders, or the stakeholder engagement, think about future, so scenario planning, forecasting, backcasting, or interpersonal skills, these are often absent, so they are really not in those programs, or they are very implicit in the learning outcome. So they're not very explicit as a goal to be achieved by students. In terms of complementary skills, for the disciplinary expertise, there is an overrepresentation of food science and technology related disciplines and business management and innovation. So this is more present in those learning objectives, and that underrepresentation of social science and humanities. And if you consider programs that include both, then these are very rare. programs that include social science and food technology, business innovation, making it way more plural and diverse. This is very rare. And in terms of general and professional abilities, competences like critical thinking, creativity, lifelong learning, interpersonal self-awareness, communication, they are also often not addressed or very implicit in learning outcomes. So these are the main findings from this thematic analysis, and how we want to contribute to addressing those gaps, because if those are competences that are important for system transformation, so how to make sure that we have opportunities to foster those competences in higher education. And here is also a platform for cross-project collaboration, especially FOSNet, that is another European project, FoodPass and FoodClick. These are all projects that also have this synergetic ambition to establish a network in higher education and teaching. Of course, they are more than only teaching, but the focus here is in higher education teaching, and how to support the development of those competences and policy for food system and food science education. So in FOSNet, there will be participatory workshops to develop a new or different curriculum for food system science, and pilot projects, how pilot implementation and testing of those curriculum in different universities. Also rely on the vertical theme of Clever Food for building these partnerships, also a space for peer coaching, reflection in relation to the adoption of those curriculum, and establishing this higher education network so that we can also have a community around those topics and challenges, and building also towards summer schools and conferences that are also part of FOSNet and Clever Food. So that's how we envision the cross-project collaboration in this task. And it's also, of course, as I mentioned, we want to organize this participatory workshops, so that's we need to engage with those who are interested, students, policymakers, faculty in higher education, to participate, to join this discussion, so that the curriculum that we can develop is meaningful and address the needs that those different stakeholders encounter. So I invite you to join the vertical theme in Clever Food for that, or just drop me an email so then we can be in touch on how to continue this ongoing task. And that was what I had to say. So thank you very much.
Super. Thank you very much, Eduardo. That was a really interesting and excellent complement to Gabriéla's presentation, and also an excellent introduction for the next part of our webinar. So with a warm thank you to both speakers for seeding the discussion with our excellent presentations. And now we have approximately 40 minutes for a panel discussion on education for sustainable food systems. And this panel discussion will be divided in two parts. First, we will focus on education for policy. And second, we will focus on education for industry. Each discussion will begin with a statement asking the panelists and the audience to consider a two-part question. One, what are the skills and knowledge needed for a career in either policy or industry for sustainable food systems? And two, how is obtaining these skills and knowledge currently addressed by our higher education system? We have 7 panelists, and we have the audience. The panelists are the 2 speakers, Gabriéla and Eduardo, and the following 5 experts. One is Dr. Maarten van der Kamp. Maarten is the Director of Education at the EIT Food or Eat Food. He is passionate about developing educational programs that equip entrepreneurs to tackle environmental and social challenges for a sustainable society. Previously, he taught both entrepreneurship and sustainability, worked as an engineer, and he led a network for entrepreneurship education. That is Maarten van der Kamp. Also on our panel is Francesca Felici. Francesca is a food systems anthropologist. She has been working with FAO for over a year as an Agrofood systems specialist in the ESF division, where she is contributing to policymaking and to Agrofood systems transformation. And then we have two students, the joint presidents of the European Network of Dietary Students, or ENDietS. This is Melody Kolay and Ines Teixeira Duarte. And these co-presidents are from this student network that is embedded within the European Federation of the Association of Dietetics, that is the EFFAD. And our fifth and final external panelist is Marjan de Boer. And Marjan is the program leader of the Master Program in Food Systems Innovation at the Aeres University of Applied Sciences. So we have our 7 panelists and we have the audience. Now I will present the first statement, and I think we can also put this statement in the chat so that we can go back and look at it during the discussion. And then I'll ask each of the panelists to comment briefly, and briefly means 1 minute, on this statement. Here I'll let you know that I'm a pretty strict timekeeper, so I'll let you know when you're at a minute. And then we'll spend about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, talking about education for policy, and then about 20 minutes talking about education for industry. And each round will start with this 1 minute statement per panelist. So panelists, please, for round 1, let's keep our reaction and our discussion about policy. So here is the statement. What skills and knowledge are needed for a career in policy for sustainable food systems? And how is this addressed in current higher education systems? So here I'd like to go to our policy expert, Francesca Felici of the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization. And I ask you, Francesca, please, can you give a short reaction to the statement?
Yeah, thanks so much. Actually, for a career in policy focused on sustainable food systems, I would say that several critical skills and knowledge areas are needed. We have to ensure that young people leave higher education system with competence and knowledge that are needed nowadays by agri-food systems. But what we need nowadays we're moving towards transformative policies. These policies differ significantly from the traditional approaches as they address complexity, uncertainty, and the need for systemic change. So I would say that in terms of skills, systems thinking, coordination, and continuous learning are the one needed mostly.
And how do you think this is addressed in our current higher education system?
Yeah. Let's say that in addition to these skills, also some knowledge and technical skills are required, such as deep understanding of agri-food systems, knowledge, for example, knowledge on food safety, smart agriculture, marketing, and also knowledge on public policy design and examples, case studies on transformative policies. Nowadays, we have, let's say, a lot of knowledge and technical skills, but we miss more these core competencies that our colleague were referring to. May I go in deep?
Not yet. We'll come back for that. I want to go around to the other panelists. Thanks, Francesca. I'll ask now if there's another panelist who'd like to give a short reaction to this statement on education for policy. Who'd like to go first? I'm going to ask all of you. Maarten, I see you raising your hand.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think in addition to what Francesca is saying, I think we really need to have entrepreneurship as competencies to be put in. So this is not about venture creation. This is about being entrepreneurial in policy settings. So what does that mean? It's really about creative problem solving, really understanding what are the challenges, but then also being able to bring in the networks and the resources to start experimenting, to dare to experiment, because I think that is one of those things that is very necessary to make sure that we get the right kind of solutions. But policy contexts don't always allow for this. And so it takes people who can navigate those complex policy systems with that agility to be able to bring together the right kind of coalitions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we think,
Gotta stop you, Maarten. Sorry. I want to go around to everyone, then we'll come back for a deeper discussion.
Okay.
I'd like to ask the two students, can you tell us what's happening in education now? How is this need for policy education being addressed?
Thank you so much. Indeed, those are really important skills. Recently, we have done a pan-European survey for nutrition and dietetic students and asked students what are their needs and what they have. What we see that there are some elective courses, but this is very local or very specific. And we see that the need of students is more on the side of like interdisciplinarity and interacting with other fields, and also having opportunity to work together with food sector and young leaders. So we believe that youth can and should be at the heart of the movement. So they need a chance to use the skills they have to improve it.
Mm-hmm. Super, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Marjan.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, because I think for policy and maybe in general and food systems change and transformation, it is really important, I think, that you are able to work together with people from different disciplines and that you already learn this during your program. So, for example, in our program, we have students that come from completely different parts of the food system and they need to work together on specific real-life challenges. So they can bring in their own expertise on these different parts from the food system already, and also find out that that is not the only perspective that there's there on this food system. So I think this combining and making sure that you facilitate this during the programs, whether it is in the bachelor or a master program, could be very helpful. Mm-hmm. And maybe next to that, another point, what I would like to make is the way you assess. So how do you assess the students? And well, we chose in our program to use programmatic assessment, where feedback is a very important way to do this. And we completely lost the grades. So in this way, you can also, well, give students the responsibility for their own learning path during the program, and we hope also during the rest of their lives.
Thanks. I'd like to hear from Eduardo. Eduardo, who is telling us about the competences, and I wonder what how you react to this, not only what knowledge is needed and what we're doing right now, but the important point Marjan brings up about assessing.
Yeah, I think the previous points are all valid. I think they are pretty much in line to what I tried to say in my presentation. If I think about policy, then of course we need those who have a background in public policy to have a better understanding of food system and collaborate with others, but also like economists or entrepreneurs or scientists to understand more how the policy world functions, so they can have a meaningful conversation. And yeah, assessment is, I mean, we have to understand that assessment drives learning, right? If students goes for a grade, they will study, think about the grade. So if we flip the assessment around, we also flip the learning around. But when you go to accreditation and those other institutionalized process, then it can be more difficult to have it done. So it's a big bottleneck.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Eduardo. And Gabriéla, will close with you. Can you give a short reaction, especially with your international experience, on this need for collaboration and cross integration?
Yeah, I would like to approach it a little bit from our young EFFoST group within EFFoST, and we see there what I find missing is that there is on both sides practical connection. So for primary, middle, and secondary school students, to create awareness, and how do you know which study you want to choose, and what does it bring you, and how does it link you to your future career? And also on the other end, once you're a student, how can you connect to either a career in industry, in policy, or in science? So more practically, like living labs and internships, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thanks to all the panelists for keeping a short reaction. I'll remind the panelists and the audience of the question that we're addressing right here. And it is, what skills and knowledge are needed for a career in policy for sustainable food systems? And how is this currently addressed in our higher education system? So I remind the audience that you are welcome to put questions or comments in the chat, and then I will take a look and see what we have. And I see we have something asking Gabriéla about the work from the Food Paths project, if these findings can be expected to influence study programs, and how can we incorporate the findings from the project to influencing programs in preparing knowledge and skills for policy in sustainable food systems. Any idea, Gabriéla, how can we go forward there?
That's a good question, and so we are currently assessing the curriculum, the programs, and this will come to a preliminary proposal on what curricula could look like. On the other hand, we also have to be aware that for universities and higher education and research institutes, it's not easy to just change their curricula. But I see also the two students nodding, and I think specifically what has been discussed before, to touch upon the various fields related to a sustainable food system education. We have to make sure that we understand what these needs are, and see either if we can come to a new curricula or sustainability chart for universities, or if we can fill up the gap with lifelong learning programs, which are now already existing, but to coordinate it better.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Gabriéla. Yeah. Maybe we can give the floor back to Maarten here, especially your background as so enthusiastic in educational programs and developing programs. What is your feeling about this chance of changing or modifying curricula?
I think it is, thank you. I think it is really important. And for me, one of the things that concerns me is duplication of effort. And I think there is a huge scope. I mean, we've got a massive challenge ahead. And so I think we really need to think in synergies. How do we actually bring those learnings across? And how do we actually build something that is really robust that is still context specific. So that will be country specific. It will still be sort of policy level specific, but something that's actually a robust sort of understanding. I think the FOSNet program or project is building this idea of what does food systems literacy look like, and I think that's an interesting concept to at least start with that as a common basis, and then of course that the expertise is going to grow. But I think to your point and question to Gabrielle, I think it is absolutely imperative that we take these inputs from these different or the outputs from these projects to actually really think about how do we do this at scale, and how do we leverage our own ecosystems and networks very effectively to make sure that this actually happens. And so there's also a responsibility on us to actually take that seriously and not have this just as a project output that is sort of gathering dust on the shelves in a repository.
Yeah, that is an ongoing challenge. Yeah, before I choose, is there someone who'd like to comment or add or question to Maarten?
Yes, I would. Yeah, so just thinking, because of all the things that are said now, we are also maybe a little bit stuck in our own system of also accreditation and the way we have the curricula are formed. So it would be, of course, nice if we could have some flexibility in how we can address and make and set up the curricula in order to also make the change possible, right? From education point of view. So this is also maybe something, I'm not sure because I'm not completely into all the projects that are running, but could be very maybe necessary to take these, maybe the ministries of education and also the accreditation organizations of different countries into the process to be sure that you can make this more flexible and different way of making education ready for, and the people that are taught in education ready for change.
I wonder, Melody and Ines, do you feel that the students have a voice in shaping curricula?
Well, there is not an easy answer for that, but we can say students need to more involve in the changes, because sometimes, most of times, we are in the part of results, and when something change, we already in the end line. So I think students should be involved during the process. Maybe it's important to ask how and what kind of information and skills they want to gain, and involve them in this, because if there is a big change and they are not ready, or they don't feel the need of it, they are not aware of it, maybe they will be resistant to change and learn. So I think it's very important to involve them in this process, and doing together, like not one way, but two ways of communication and change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's absolutely the goal. And I wonder both to Francesca and to Eduardo about any efforts to involve students. Francesca, in the FAO, is there an interaction with training students as future policy leaders?
Yeah, actually, I would like to mention two things. First of all, as I feel, we always foster the idea of this dynamic approach, continuous learning to education. Because, I mean, we think that our education system plays a role in developing mindset that embrace this learning from both success and failure, fostering experimentation without fear of failure somehow. So this is actually very important, so that we teach to students, to professionals, to who is interested in this field, that everyone is learning. Actually, we're learning all together. And secondly, for example, as my division, ESF, at the moment is collaborating with with a university, UCL, and we are trying to develop the skills I was mentioning before, so the system thinking, coordination, etc., for current and future policymakers. So our mandate is also to collaborate with universities to actually bridging the gap between our organizations and academia that sometimes they are disconnected. So yeah.
That's a super introduction to a question we have from the audience about bridging the gap through language. You know, how do we get policymakers and practitioners to understand the language, the jargon that is used in food systems science? And so what approaches, what kind of processes, what kind of interactions do we think would be best to help the researchers communicate with policy? Anybody want to take that one on?
I can reply because this is actually our one of our goals, because for example, in this collaboration with the university, our goal is actually to make the knowledge that sometimes is a bit cryptical from academia, to make it more digestible for policymakers. So we try to organize these trainings where there are professors, experts on the topic with policymakers, and in this exchange there's, let's say, a dialogue between academia and let's say the field workers of the sector, and we try to fill this gap, let's say, to make the academic knowledge more digestible. Yeah.
If I may add to this, because I think it is not only the food system scientists that have a jargon. Policymakers have a jargon in equal measure. Industry has a particular kind of jargon, and I think what we really need to look at are the skill sets to be able to mediate between those different languages and to be able to translate policy objectives into kind of how you would actually take that into industry. How would you put system science components in it? It is just understanding that there are all these different languages, and words might not always mean the same thing. But once you get an understanding of the kind of that there's a siloed nature of the food system, and that there are these multiple dialogues, then that is already a very strong starting point, at least to start the inquiry, or just the inquisitiveness and the curiosity of, hey, here we're talking, we might not be using the same words, but we're saying the same thing. Or inversely, hey, there is this curiosity of we're using the same words, but actually we don't quite mean the same thing, to really start getting that those connections closer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
thanks.
If I can add, I'm really with you, Maarten, because I think it's also, we need to have a space in higher education for this plurality in terms of teams and diversity, right? Because if you're only in our disciplinary silos, we all speak the same language there, but when we go outside, we don't. And also, I think also it's important that we don't run the risk of wanting to train a little bit of everything, because then we don't have experts in anything, right? So we need to have this balance between expertise, contributory expertise, but the ability to navigate the differences and to have this intermediation and translation across fields and sectors.
Mm-hmm. I'm writing a few notes. Marjan, did you want to make the final comment before we go on to part 2?
I wasn't planning to make the final comment, but I have a comment.
Go ahead, it's yours. It's yours to wrap up.
Well, no, just maybe to add to that also, that it's really important to facilitate these type of experiences also during higher education, to be able to experience as a student that there are these different languages, and that you need to deal with it not only during your studies but also in real life once you graduated and started your own working job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yeah, great. Thanks, Marjan, and thanks to everyone on the panel. Really, really nice. So in the discussion, I took very limited notes because it takes all the energy to listen to this really, really nice discussion. But I'm going to move us on now to a related but yet a different topic. This is now round 2 of our panel discussion. And here I would like for us to focus on industry, on education for sustainable food systems from the industry perspective. And now here is our specific question. What are the skills and knowledge needed for a career in industry for sustainable food systems? And how is this addressed in our current higher education? So we're again looking at the skills and knowledge. We're looking at what are we doing now? And this time I'd like to start with the short reaction. Again, we'll go around to all of the panelists, but starting this time, please, Maarten, can you open this discussion?
Yeah, thank you. I'm actually on my way home from CL, and so there we had sort of lots of that interaction between, on the one hand, students really getting ready for a career in industry and industry themselves, and so we had some fascinating discussions there. And I think there's very much that strong realization that there is not enough innovation in the food system, that needs to be strengthened. But this is where there really is the challenge of how do you, if the vast majority are SMEs that don't necessarily have the resources to innovate, how do you bring that in? And so the kind of students need to actually have that in their backpack of skills to really be able to do that. We're talking mostly about similar skills as what we talked about policymakers. So kind of effective collaborations, understanding ecosystems, etc. But then the other thing that we picked up was actually, so we're really here talking about skills and mindsets. In terms of knowledge, this is one where over the last couple of years, of course, AI has become very much sort of commonplace. And some of the people that I talked to from industry were saying that AI is going to completely transform the food system in all of its components. So we also need to start thinking about those deep technical skills, and how do we prepare students for that, not necessarily by training them in their own, sort of in the latest technologies, but how to think about them, and then to think about the ethics of technology application as well.
Yeah, thanks, Maarten. To me, the students are next. Please, can you give a short reaction to this skills and knowledge for industry and sustainable food?
Yes, of course. It was indeed very interesting, and the students do have an important role in this sector and into bringing innovation and new visions. And we do identify as the European Student Network many examples of even student-led projects in this field. But one big challenge that we identify, especially while talking with professors and educators, is the lack of student involvement that the professionals feel, right? And what we as students identified, students are not lazy, students don't want to not involve. What is lacking is inspiration, because the activities and all the projects that you are developing and you want students to be involved in, they need to student engagement and they need testimonies. So our call to actions is to ask you to involve us, because we know that you're creating opportunities for us, but create opportunities that will not only build knowledge, but also spark engagement. Because young people, we do know that they are ready to contribute. We just need to ensure that they know they can do it, that you can give testimonies, young faces, so they can see young people like me are involved, so I can involve too.
Great. Oh, thank you so much. Gabriéla, I see you smiling, and I am also thinking about FoodPath's work. What are we doing to get students involved in their own education for sustainable food systems in industry?
Yeah, indeed. I really like this discussion, but also the answer of Maarten, I completely align with that. We just sent out a survey to our youth network of EFFoST to ask them exactly these questions. So what are the personal values? What is their ambition? How did they select a study? How do they assess the study? Do they think it will add to their career? And what gaps do they identify? During the EFFoST conference, we will also have a special session where we invite 4 students from the food system education to join the discussion. So I think this way we try to really involve the youth, and but what you see is, I think, practical skills and knowledge that is lacking, but also in the personal skills. So together with EHEC, which is the European Association for Hygiene Standards, that's not the correct abbreviation. We have an iMentorship program where we match one student with one person from the industry to coach and mentor that students to decide on the next steps. So that could also be something that could be worked out more.
Great, thanks, Gabriéla. From the other panelists, anyone else with a short reaction? Francesca?
Yeah, thanks. First of all, we should say that actually innovative companies nowadays are basing their business and investments models on environmental, social guidelines. And this is because consumers are demanding more sustainability in production. So for a career in the industry focused on sustainable food systems, it's important to take into account this holistic approach, let's say. An industry that assumes an holistic approach believes that sustainability and profitability needs to coexist somehow. The current higher education system are increasingly aware of those needs for professional students, and many institutions are evolving their curricula, moving beyond the traditional business and incorporating some other perspective, for example, social science, humanities, environmental knowledge. And this is very important. Another thing is that it's practical experience is also very important. Internships, mentorships, and collaboration, collaborative projects with industry leaders can bridge this gap between the theory and practice that sometimes happen in sustainable food systems.
Yeah, thank you, Francesca. Marjan?
Yeah, maybe to add to that, because yeah, completely agree to what has been said already. So what I was also thinking was thinking about the industry and sustainable food systems. I think you need also creativity and people that are able to design and co-create together with the end users, whomever they are, to be able to make like really impactful new innovations or products or whatever. So this should also be addressed during the program and during the education that you are developing these type of competences. And I completely agree with the practical point. In our program, although it's only 1 year, the master program, we have 2 internships, of which the first one is even like what we say a crossover internship, where a student has to go to a part in the food system with which they are not familiar with yet. So they are really learning in practice what it is to have to get a feeling with the whole food system in general. So yeah, I think there is also this combination, very important to experience what is happening in the real world.
Yeah. Thanks, Marjan. Yeah. And Eduardo, your experience on collaboration in your research and also in the Clever Food project, what is your view on this education for focused on industry work?
In many wise things have been said already, and what I think we as higher education institutes, we need to learn how to deal with failure and how to promote risk-taking, right? Because if we go back to assessment, we all assess success, what you learn, what you know, but how we if you think about innovation, creativity, it's about taking risks, about doing things differently, and we will fail when we try these things. How we can, as a higher education system, also reward that, make space for that, and it will require a different approach to assessment as well.
Wow, that's a really good point. Yeah, Marjan, reaction?
Yeah, just to add to that, maybe I'm coming back to my first point, but so the assessing is also then very, well, crucial if you want to teach students that it's okay to fail. So that's a thing we try to do in our program as well, and students find this sometimes very difficult. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but yeah. So it's a real mindset for both the teachers and students to get used to this.
Right.
If I can quickly add to this, because in my education, also I teach some, I would say, different courses, also interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, and it's very hard to the students to embrace this because they come from a frame of reference, right? So then they come to a new environment and that will not click. It requires a lot of coaching, a lot of helping to navigate that new environment because we belong to a system that has rules and structures, so we don't change behavior overnight.
I want to remind the audience that this discussion is open to you, and I'm checking in the chat and in the Q&A. So please, comments or questions for the panelists, and then straight back to our really fascinating discussion.
So if I can then pick up on this, because I think this requires courage on behalf of the educators to actually engage in the conversation inside of the university. Kind of, is an exam still the best way of having that assessment? Are we actually going to be looking at completely different ways? How can you innovate in teaching and learning? What is happening in terms of ed tech solutions that can help, not as a gimmick, but as really a genuine way of helping also different learning styles. So it also actually, if you do this carefully, you can actually accommodate also for neurodiversity better. And yeah, that's then for me the bit of it can be this part of this broader renewal of excellence in teaching and learning. And that, I think, as educators is also something that should drive us to always try and improve on what that learning journey looks like, and to make sure that all those aspects of resilience, of entrepreneurship, etc., that they are embedded in how the student is prepared for an interesting career.
Yeah, so maybe just to add up to that, one thing that helps us currently is the new framework that has been developed, which is the Inner Development Goals framework, which is related to the Sustainable Development Goals, which is really focusing on this personal and development to be able to do exactly all the things that we just mentioned before. So to be reflexive, co-creative, to be aware of your own system before you are able to change a system outside of you. So these type of things are, I think, very important also. And not only for the students, but also for the teachers to be aware of it and to do this for yourself as well. Yeah.
Comes back to an interesting point raised by Gabriéla in her presentation about teacher skills and capacity, and having the teachers embrace risk-taking themselves in their educational approaches.
Can I add
Yeah.
something? Sorry, yeah. One thing also that links with this is I think, Maarten, you have as EIT, you have a very interesting master where you involve, I think, 6 universities, and we found the same in the UK, that there are universities that don't have a master that covers all, but they have a network of universities that cover then the whole education, or all programs related to food system education. I was wondering if we have time, Katherine, how Maarten, can you elaborate a little bit on that, how that works? I'm quite curious.
Yeah, thank you. So for us, our master's program was really about actually also an experiment of kind of how far can you push kind of the Bologna process and kind of what is possible. And actually here we are delivering a master's where none of the universities is delivering a full curriculum, and the student only gets the full curriculum by visiting 3 different universities. And I think this comes back to the point of Eduardo. We need to have on the one hand, the specialists, but on the other hand, the generalists, and being able to look across the kind of the entire food system. So the entire cohort takes overarching modules in innovation and entrepreneurship. But then because of the 3 different universities that they visit in the 2-year masters, they can then specialize in kind of particular tracks that might focus on sustainable agriculture, or it might be focusing on food safety or something like that, but where the 3 universities provide a particular profile for a path. And so that means that actually we can have an approach that matches the career interests of the students, but they also have this very strong big network that they come out of with the masters in order to actually go into the food system. And so that's been a really interesting experiment to run. It's been a complex experiment, but yes, it works. And but this is where it comes back. It's been a very big task to try and get university systems to actually accept this as a way. And that's been the first consortium agreement took us a 1.5 years to negotiate. And so it's something where there are implicit consequences to have such a model, but yeah, we can demonstrate a little bit on kind of the excitement that comes with it, and it's been a fun process.
Yeah, thank you, Maarten, for closing our discussion on the education in industry for sustainable food systems with this really practical example of something working, but requiring a lot of work and a lot of compromise. So we're coming to our last 5 minutes, and I'd like to close our panel discussion by looking at what our audience is bringing up as, I think, an overarching link that we have not addressed, and that's the connection between food and health. So we have 2 questions from the audience asking, how do we ensure that health is sufficiently covered in education, both for policy and in education for industry, and that we should aim, and then another comment, that can we aim to make this connection more evident? And an example of medical training where the training in nutrition, the education in nutrition is minimal. So what can we do in our food system education to bring health both into the policy education and into the industry education? Maybe Francesca, you could tell us your thought.
Yeah, exactly. We should make this connection between food and health more evident in both programs, in health programs and in food programs. We should create connections. We need more hours dedicated to health in food programs and the reverse. So we should increase the hours on food in medical programs. And of course, the new educational programs which are interdisciplinary, where different departments are involved. I saw the born of new masters where there was half of the master in the University of medicine and the half in food science on other departments. So we should try to, let's say, foster this kind of interdepartmental, interdisciplinary programs to create the connections between different systems, let's say.
Mm-hmm. There another comment about bringing health discussion into the picture?
Maybe we can.
Yes, ladies, you go first.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, as a student point, when I was listening all the conversation, it just came into my mind. Usually, when we talk about the education, for example, like medicine student, but we are trying to teach food to medicine student, and medicine-related, health-related things to food student, but we never think to put both of them in the same class and let them interact with each other before they graduate. So why don't we move this interaction in the education system and let them take 1-2 courses together and blend these courses so they can really get the interaction and be familiar, and they can also learn the jargon together. So maybe all the things is just creating a connection between them. That's as like a student's point of view.
Thank you. And Maarten, your kindness in letting the students go first means that you have lost your spot. I'm very sorry, but we're going to close with the student comment because we like to start on time and end on time. And I want to thank all of the panelists, especially thank the 2 speakers. Thank the organizers, the group at Zon MW in the Netherlands, and the Food Paths coordinators, INRE in France, and a special thank you to the audience, because I know it takes a lot. There are a lot of good webinars out there, and it takes a lot to register for something and then really show up and really participate, putting your questions out there in the chat and really be engaged. So thanks to all of you. And our final word is to invite you to a future Food Paths webinar. And I think Larissa has the screen to share to tell you a bit about it. It's on the 21st of November. And this webinar will cover inspiring food systems cases. So please mark your calendars for 21 November. And we look forward to meeting with you again at that time. Thanks, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.